to This Pickleball Life. I'm K-Dubs and Jilly B.
Hello and welcome to pod 24 of This Pickleball Life, and it is not going to be a bore. I'm your co-host, Jill Braverman, aka your girl Jilly B, top 20 in the world pro pickleballer, former CEO of Duper and chief of staff at Major League Pickleball.
And I'm K-Dubs. I am a pickleball aficionado, but a golf professional by trade. And this pod is too important for any catching up. Jill, what happened in this pickleball life of yours this week?
We're just going to get right into it. What a lot of people don't understand is that the PPA and MLP are not aligned on testing requirements for paddles. So what this means is a player can play a paddle at PPA events that is deemed illegal at an MLP event. And we are actually seeing this happen in real time. There were 24 paddles confiscated and failed at Major League Pickleball Atlanta, up from 9 in San Clemente. Those 24 paddles can go and be played in PPA events. I was victim to this firsthand at PPA Vegas, where I played with Tyra Black. We played against Irina Tereshchenko and Jade Kawamoto in the second round. It was evident from the very first point that Irina's paddle was hotter than hot. In Tyra's words, I played mixed doubles yesterday and made it to the semifinals, and the only person whose paddle hit the ball that hard was James Ignatowicz, who's 6'4" and swinging at the ball. And as our referee later said, in his exact words, Irina was able to create power effortlessly with minimal swing, which is a telltale sign of an illegal paddle. This is our story.
So, Jill, what do you say to people who will, just assume, hey, the paddle passed the test, it must be fine?
Tyra and I challenged the paddle, as did Leah Jansen and Anna Bright. We lost 4-6 to Jade and Irina, as did Anna Bright and Leah Jansen. During the paddle tests, all of our paddles passed. This is because the PPA does not conduct on-site deflection testing like MLP does. So let's really think about that. They do surface roughness testing, and then they have an ultrasound machine that checks for core crush and some components of delamination. They do not have a proper deflection testing protocol on site. They have to send that to a lab.
So that's a lot of legalese, verbal, whatever you call it, mumbo jumbo. But what that means is the PPA is only testing for the roughness or the grit, which would be a spin factor, and core crushing, which is that thing that happens through play where the middle of the paddle, the honeycomb part, will be crushed and create a space, which causes a benefit in a trampoline effect to make the ball go faster, which is not to say the paddle started at a too fast, right? That's what deflection testing is all about, is just here is a paddle and here's how fast the ball is coming back off of it. When you give it speed, is it coming faster back at you?
Exactly. And there is no on-site deflection testing at PPA events, unlike at Major League Pickleball. As Tyra and I both felt while playing against this paddle was, I can't get out of the way fast enough. Tyra said, I don't feel safe. I can't play my game. This feels like playing against a guy. Like, it is, I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
So yeah, what would you say to a person who's like, well, you do go play mixed doubles. How is this scarier?
Well, it's funny. Someone very high up at the PPA did say that to me, said those exact words. And I said, you're right, but you don't expect that in gender doubles.
It's a different game. Yeah.
You don't expect to play Jade Kawamoto and James Ignatowicz in gender doubles.
Right.
I mean, Tyra and I think, are two pretty hard hitters. I think we also both have very fast hands. You could not get out of the way of the ball. And if you fed the ball with speed to her paddle, to that paddle, it comes back faster. I mean, this is the exact reason we have deflection testing.
There's no ducking before that ball hits you square in the chest.
No.
Which happened more than a few times. If you go back and watch the footage of the Anna Bright Leia match, you see them having the same effect. Jill's match was not on the feed, but we
recorded
a lot of footage, and it looks very similar.
So it's funny that you mentioned like getting hit, because when I spoke to Connor Pardo during the challenge, the CEO of, or the commissioner of the PPA, I said, this is a safety hazard. You have a fiduciary and a moral obligation, now that I have informed you of this, now that the referee has informed you of this, now that Tyra has informed you of this, now that Leigh and Anna have informed you of this, you have a moral and a safety obligation to the players. And he's like, well, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. You know, I need more feedback. I said, but you banned and were mandatory. You were mandatory testing Pro XR paddles. You had a temporary ban on carbon and were mandatory testing on carbon paddles. So do the same for paddle tech right now. And he goes, well, I need to collect more player feedback. But then when I reached out to Irina and Jade's first round opponent on Instagram and asked her, has anyone from the PPA reached out to you? She said no.
Audrey Brown, right?
Mm-hmm. She said no. And I said, did you feel it was hot? The paddle was hot that you played against? She said, yeah, but I was too scared to mention anything to anybody.
Of course.
So here I am like doing the legwork to find a kernel of truth in this.
Yeah. Well, to what do you say to the people who would go, well, you know, the carbon paddles were failing an actual test, or the what was the other paddle manufacturer? Oh, Pro XR. Mm-hmm. I don't know what their excuse was.
Well, so who
is
do you?
This just the beginning of that?
Well, let's back up for one more second. Is there perfect paddle testing? Okay, so kudos to MLP and the PPL, the independent third party they have hired, because they did this. They've cracked this code, right? They took all this data 6-7 months ago at Daytona, all the paddle data, and they took 2 standard deviations away from the average when they started collecting the data. They came up with the number 50, which they really felt is hitting the nail on the head. So paddles above this 50 number for deflection testing are okay-ish, and ones that aren't are not. So ones that are 49 and lower. So if you think about like a Project 002 Selkirk, like that's right around the limit for that number. And I think they've nailed it. But the PPA either doesn't have the time or the bandwidth
Or the interest.
To implement the policies that MLP for 7 months have been testing. The data, the transparency MLP and the PPL have provided players, the appendices, the documentation on this. It's right there for everyone to just take the time and read. And when I'm talking to Connor during the challenge, and he's like, you know, no, the PPL, it's all the same stuff we do. They just charge MLP more. It's as ineffective as what we do. There's no good testing for paddles yet. That's what he said to me. There's no good testing for paddles yet. We've been working tirelessly on this for 6 months. No, he hasn't. MLP has. And he said, we got to build a robot, just like they do in baseball. So, hey, if you can find me a robot, I'll test her paddle with it. That's the way he ended our call.
Wow.
I can't do that, but I can lend them the $6,000 required to buy a deflection test.
Yeah. Yeah. So the obvious question, who do you blame? The players of the tour?
It's a good question. You know, do you hate the player? Do you hate the game? Are Irina and Annalie Waters and other players simply playing within the rules that the PPA has set forth, which is pretty easy to work around, right? There's no penalty. Yeah, where's the penalty?
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sarah Ansbury, for taking one for the team, and now no one else will ever be penalized.
So do you blame those players for working within the constructs that the PPA have set forth? Or do you blame the game?
So you don't want to make a statement on who you blame?
I know what I would do. I would never play a paddle that I know is failing MLP standards and go and put that into competition mode in a PPA. I mean, that's cheating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in fact, right, have you ever had a paddle that failed their testing?
Absolutely. So at PPA Denver, I was playing a paddle, my Move-In 16X, my Groove-In Thermoform paddle, and I was like, wow, this thing is like not responding how I would expect it. And I'm hitting a lot of balls out, and I'm like hitting a lot of balls like at neck level high. And I went to Carl Schmitz, the guy that does the testing for the PPA, and I said, hey, this doesn't feel right. And it was the day before the event. And he tested, he said, yeah, it's delaminated. And I said, thank you for letting me know. I kind of already knew that, and I took it out of play.
Yeah.
And, I'd been leaving it in my car. I'd been traveling a lot. It was really hot in Denver. Paddles are sensitive. Yeah. And that's very different than purposefully playing one paddle in a PPA event and a different paddle in an MLP event.
Right. Well, and you are in a unique position, just to be clear for maybe people who don't know. You are now a person who has been on the same side as a failed paddle with Sarah Ansbury. How does this make you feel on the other side of it?
I feel like I've protected the PPA enough when it comes to paddle testing. It's like that saying where it's like, shame me once, shame on you, shame me twice, shame on me. So during the Sarah Ansbury fiasco, she was irate. I'm the one who kind of calmed her down and was like, let's think rationally about this. The paddle failed. It sucks that you're being punished for something that occurred in game, meaning her paddle has to test prior to competing. And then in the span of the 25 minutes in the game, failed. And she was being punished for something that occurred during play. And that day, when the PPA went to take the paddle for further testing, Gamma begged Sarah not to let them do that because they wanted it. And Connor Pardo and Sam Flaxman promised Sarah and me to our faces that they would give her back the paddle. A week later, Sam Flaxman calls us to tell us that it was accidentally destroyed. Let's think about this for 1 second.
How do you destroy a paddle accidentally? It's like one thing is to lose it, but to destroy it, that's a whole nother level.
Let's think about that for 1 second. And this is, it's this stuff that's the reason the PPA and MLP had to unmerge and then merge again under much more attractive terms for MLP. This is the reason 135 players, despite being offered 25 to 50% more money from the PPA,
Sometimes
signed
triple or quadruple.
This is the reason these players said no to more money and signed with Major League Pickleball, because actions have consequences. Every action has a reaction. And when the PPA acts shady, they lose the trust of the players. And that is exactly what is happening again. And you shame me once, shame on you. You shame me twice, shame on me.
So what would you say to the fact that, okay, they won 3 matches, but then Callie and Lucy were able to beat them?
Kudos to Callie and Lucy. I think there's a million things that could explain that. Callie and Lucy could be a better doubles team than me and Tyra. Callie and Lucy could have had a better game plan going into it. Irina and Jade could have played worse, been tired. I don't have a great answer to that question. I don't.
Yeah. Pickleball's pickleball. Humans are humans. You can give someone a sledgehammer and they can still miss the nail.
It's a little cooler, so the ball's going to fly a little further. Wasn't as hot as it was at noon, 12:30. So then it's like, okay, you've got this super hot paddle. Are you missing more balls out that 4 hours ago were staying in because it's mushy? Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of factors. I don't have an answer.
Okay, so just to fully be clear, if you were the powers that be, what would be your next steps?
So I actually was speaking to someone high up at the PPA this morning, and I said, so I really want to understand your stance on this. Are you telling me that right now, because you guys are nowhere near aligning with MLP on testing standards, and you don't have on-site deflection testing, and you don't even know what you want the number to be, 50, 48, 60, for the deflection test, that if you were a pro player in my shoes, you would go out and find the hottest, most illegal paddle you could and play it right now until you guys have better testing? And this person answered, that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah, what does that even look like? Are paddle manufacturers going to start chasing this even further? Are players going to call their manufacturers and demand a borderline paddle so that they keep up with the rest of the illegals?
Frankly, I'd be shocked if Irina's paddle didn't come back passing whatever lab deflection test, because I have no faith in the PPA after the accidental destruction of Sarah Ansbury's paddle. I have no faith even the correct paddle was marked and handed back. According to Carl Schmitz in a text message to me, Irina said during the challenge, "This was the paddle I played at MLP that passed 3 times MLP deflection testing. See, I have a sticker on the butt of the paddle." Well, PPL doesn't put stickers on the butt of paddles. So did you take off a sticker
random.
from a PPL paddle that passed MLP and put it on the butt of your PPA paddle? Like, what?
Yeah, it makes no
I'm
sense.
still trying to understand that.
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense.
So
fell off a truck.
so to be clear, I fully expect the paddle to come back passed with flying colors.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Did we miss anything?
Yeah, I think we missed a few things.
Yeah.
You know, are these natural growing pains, right? Like, oh, you know, this is a natural part of part of a startup. You know, paddle testing, is this just natural? And I think the answer to that is no. Like, the PPA has made it clear they don't want to implement changes that they would have to unmake or unchange in 3 months' time. But what did Tim Park say?
So silly, yeah. And I always come back to this, but this is a startup. Everything in pickleball is a startup. So if you're not moving fast enough that you sometimes have to unwrite the rules you wrote, you're not doing enough for the sanctity and the safety of the players to deserve any credit whatsoever. Like, everything should be on both ends pushing the limits of the rules and of the technology. Like, if you don't push back, the technology is just going to run away with itself.
But what was the exact Tim Parks quote we liked so much?
Yeah, he said that if you don't write some rules that have to be unwritten, then
you're not moving fast enough.
You're not trying hard enough. You're not doing enough.
You know,
Absolutely.
I think the other question here is, you know, why am I like so fired up about this? Like, it does, like, people look at me and they think like, you're such a fiery player, you're such an emotional player. Yeah, I mean, not really. Like, inside I'm really calm, and off the court, if you hand me a problem, I'm the first person to be like, okay, think about this from all sides. Like, I've sat in the PPA shoes, I've sat in MLP shoes. I'm also a player. Like, let's just be really calm and think about this from all sides as logically and pragmatically as humanly possible. That's my style.
Yeah.
And this fires me up. This really, really fires me up. And I think there aren't a lot of players who are in a position to stick their neck out. Mm-hmm. And I'm not scared of that. I'm just not scared of retaliation. Like, there's right and there's wrong. And there have to be people who stand up and get counted. And this is a time to stand up and be counted.
Absolutely. I mean, those who may not know Jill as well as I do know that there's 2 things I think that really you live by, and that is that bullies need to be punched in the nose.
100%.
Right? And that, you know, you can't shy away from things that are difficult.
No.
And you are a woman of action. And a lot of people are men and women of words and of emotions. And you are a person who is not afraid to pull trigger and make changes. And we need more of that, clearly, in the world of pickleball. There's a lot of people who are afraid of image or afraid of ramifications this way, that way, both on the tour's side and the player's side. And it's like, we all want the same thing, right? Right? Don't we all want to play the same game? Don't we all not want some people to be playing a different game than we're playing?
Yeah, and that's what it felt like. It felt like I was out there playing a different game against that paddle. And at the end of the day, the truth shall set you free. Like, this is just the truth. 24 paddles failed MLP Atlanta. Yeah. Those paddles are all in play at PPA events right now.
Yeah. And I mean,
let's really think about that for 1 second. Let's really digest that for 1 second.
Yeah, this is the escalation of a problem that people thought was getting improved.
Well,
right?
this is what I was going to say. And then when I was speaking to this person very high up at the PPA, they go, I thought this paddle thing was like calming down. And I was like, no, 9 failed San Clemente, 24 Atlanta.
Summer break. Time to get a new hot paddle.
So what do we need? I think Players need a player council. They need an independent player council, not players in the pocket of the PPA, players close to organizations, like a true council. That is what the players need. And I think the last question, and this is the title of this podcast, is who is the biggest cheater in the game? It's the PPA. And here's why. They're cheating their players. They're cheating their fans. They're cheating the gamblers who are now trying to bet and probably looking up what paddle the player is playing.
I know, literally.
That they want to gamble on. And they're cheating themselves. And this is the behavior that got them into the pickle from a month ago with their pants down, losing 135 players to MLP.
Okay, so you're a player, you're playing the game, you want to be even Steven, honest person. How do you know your paddle's problematic?
Yeah, when Irina's flying across the court, hitting balls so fast that they're tagging Tyra and I, again, two players, Tyra and me, two players that I think have good hands. She knows exactly what she's doing. I mean, I played my move-in was delaminated for like 1 minute, and I was like, okay, yeah, that feels funny. That sounds funny. So like, don't think for 1 second listening to this podcast that players don't know what their paddles feel like and sound like. They play them all day long. They're like an extension of our hands, okay? Like, if one day your hand is doing something different, you know it. So yeah, if your question is what should a player do, they should stand up and be counted and be honest. The other thing I wanted to call out is I think it's so interesting that the companies that have kind of been singled out, ProXR, Carbon, Gamma, all have been made examples of. All companies that don't pay the PPA that, $10,000 to $20,000 a month paddle mafia fee. I think that's worth noting.
It definitely is factual and interesting. The other factual and interesting thing is who else plays paddle tech?
Oh yeah, who are the people that play paddle tech?
Wonder if this is more pervasive than one person. And I just think that...
and how did those players do in MLP? Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Huh.
It's a thinker.
Wow.
If you listen to the before and after videos, I think we should play it for our audience.
We will.
So we'll do one blind. Obviously, some of our listeners are never watching, and then we'll do one with video.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and play a video of what paddle tech sounds like at MLP, and then we're going to go ahead and play you guys a video of what it sounds like in a PPA.
Okay, here's the clips from Vegas with no video. And now these same clips with the video. Now here's MLP Atlanta with no video.
Hopefully not the last. Big swings here. Haymakers from both sides.
And the same MLP clips with the video.
Hopefully not the last. Big swings here. Haymakers from both sides.
I mean, I've obviously watched a lot more in-person pro pickleball than many folks, and specifically Irina, because you've played her so much all the time. And I had walked away at the beginning of this match to go grab something I left on the other court, and I walked back for the very first point, and I was like, what was that? What is that sound?
Yeah.
And what am I watching?
I know. It was unbelievable.
It was night and day.
I know.
So
And I do want to be clear, this is not like a diatribe on Irina. Like, this just happens to be that it is Irina. I do have a history with Irina, a very positive one and a very negative one. When she was an athlete for Duper, she was at our wedding in June. So this is someone I've been friends with, then had a very negative experience with. I'm not hiding that. This is not an attack on her. If it was someone else playing a paddle tech, if it was someone else playing a XYZ G234 paddle,
if it was someone playing a Grooven,
if it was someone playing a Grooven, we'd be sitting here having the same conversation. Absolutely. So I do want to call that out.
Yeah. So hopefully people are listening, and hopefully people are not going to feel like this is just shouting into a wet rag, because I know that's how a lot of people have felt in the past. But we're a collective species, and we have power in numbers.
There's very, very, very simple solutions here. And this is what I was talking to my connection at the PPA this morning about. If you don't want to align with MLP and the PPL, for whatever reason, no idea why not. But if it's because you don't want to make a change that you unchange in 3 months, fine. Then do this. Reserve a right in your rules that at the PPA's sole discretion, you can at any time, given player feedback, employee feedback, and referee feedback, remove a paddle for safety concerns. So you can start there. Okay, that's one start. Number 2, and this is for MLP. Shame is the single largest motivator in society. It's greater than fear, it's greater than money, it's greater than fame and praise. Shame. They have the list of the 24 paddles, the manufacturers, and the player names that failed in Atlanta. Publish the list.
Let us know who it is. And even if it were me, I would want to know. I'd want people to know, like, this is a known offender.
They publish that list. This stops tomorrow.
Especially in a world where there aren't any players actually getting penalized at MLP. They're just removing them from play. So
this stops tomorrow. They publish that list. This stops tomorrow.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. No, I just think you've got to know who is really responsible, like who's responsible for what, and where the players are responsible, and where the tour is responsible, and where the manufacturers are responsible. And I think each of them does have a role in this.
Yeah. Well, I just want to give huge kudos to the team at Major League Pickleball for leading this charge proactively. And that was something I kept saying to Connor over the weekend, was like, this feels like you guys are reacting to this. And 7 months ago, MLP took it upon themselves to literally go out, find these standard deviations, put numbers on everything, accrue this knowledge, accrue this data, make it publicly available. And that's called a proactive approach. And kudos to Brooks Wiley, Steve Kuhn, the team at MLP, and Absolutely. The PPL.
Did you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm excited to move on. We never got to do the rest of our, introduction as we normally would, and our recap and catching up. And it's been a really busy week on top of PPA Vegas. We had the shuffle draft.
Absolutely. Hustler Nation.
Got
Nation. A new player.
Like your hat.
You know it.
It's bow time.
Bow time.
Super excited to play with Kelsey Grambo. If you don't know the name, I think you're going to know it soon.
And in fairness, after the pickup, we had several people in person and digitally, so to speak, reach out and say, like, great pickup. And we didn't even think she was going to be available at number 7.
I know, we didn't.
I feel like we stole one.
I know, we really, really didn't. So for those of you that don't know, the shuffle draft is where players can apply for Major League Pickleball and then get drafted mid-season.
As you were.
As I was in the last season's first shuffle draft. And it's cool to see Sierra Gaydon Leach back on the board, and she got picked up, and Allison Harris, who was an alternate premier, get picked up. Callan Dawson is back in the mix. And, while we were researching and throwing out names, I found myself watching a lot more APP, looking up girls, playing with a girl named Christine Maddox, who played number 1 at Pepperdine and was an NCAA All-American, who's getting into pickleball. 5'11.5", And just finding that, like, God, the future is so darn bright in pickleball. Like,
Yeah.
these girls are coming in. Like, I like the way Kate Fahey plays. I liked watching Ava Kalis.
Paige Miles.
Oh my gosh, I was like, who's this Paige Miles girl? Riley Bonner. Oh man, I really love her forehand
How about
roll
our
dink and her
lefty Hawaiian.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Jamie
Jamie
Haas.
Haas. That's a name everyone's gonna
And
know
such
in
a good
1 year.
energy on that one.
And so it's
positive.
it's so cool. Like, the future is just so bright. I'm obviously bummed that my good friend and my partner Sarah Ansbury is obviously no longer on the team. I think she brought such an intangible to the team, so much knowledge of the game. I love playing with Sarah, so definitely will miss her and grateful for everything she's helped us with.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, it kind of points to, the difference between a team versus partnerships, and that's a big part of finding the right fits.
And you're only as good, it's interesting. I mean, like, you're only as good as your last match in pickleball. You're only as good as your last event. Like, we talk about this all the time.
And how quickly, stars brighten and fade, and you're like, oh my God, this person is the next big thing. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe they just had one good day. Maybe they just had one good weekend. And who really has staying power? And really, I mean, when you experience this so viscerally in person, in living and breathing it in this pickleball life of ours, so much has to do with your draw.
Yeah.
And, who gets to pick the good side first sometimes, and like how windy was it that day, and partnerships, obviously, and certain matchups that lead to better, results for certain people than others. And obviously, to win a gold medal, you have to be able to beat everyone. But certainly every week you see someone get like a little bit of a free pass to the quarters or the semis. And you're like, oh,
totally.
They didn't have to work that hard for that one.
I know.
And other people, not so much. And that is one thing I do miss about the back draw, is like, if you had to go up against someone really tough, really early in the match, you're missing that, that chance to kind of prove yourself a couple more times, get some points on the board, play for your duper, play for all sorts of other reasons. And I understand, the reasons why they removed the back draw, but I would love to see a more, unique formats and ways to favor different types of players in different events, and not just make it be the same old every single weekend.
Totally agree. We have a lot more. We're going to take a really quick break, but don't go anywhere, because we have a Dear Jilly B tip of the day you're really not going to want to miss. And then we have our biggest takeaways from PPA Vegas that are not paddle related. And before we take this break, do you love this podcast? Do you appreciate the fact that I haven't slept in 3 nights thinking about the content for this podcast? Well, we just started a subscriber-only feature on the Jilly B Pickleball Instagram channel. So for $4.99 a month, you get all the behind-the-scenes content, all the stuff I don't say on the pod and don't put on my public Instagram. You
Jilly's
get to hear and see that. You get eligible for some in-person really fun meet and greets at tournaments. You are eligible for video analysis. And then, of course, AMAs, Ask Me Anything. So check it out. Just click subscribe on the Jilly B Pickleball Instagram, and we're going to take a quick break.
And I think the first 10 people get it at half price, right?
That's true.
So get there quick.
Yeah. Ruck Solar Packs. Do you have someone in your life who's impossible to shop for? The Ruck Solar Pack is definitely our favorite pickleball bag. It's also sleek, fits your laptop, your paddles, and it has a solar panel to charge all devices.
A solar panel, like
how cool
who
is
comes
that?
up with that? That is the coolest idea ever. It literally charges your devices from the solar pack while you're playing pickleball. I mean, does it get better than that? I don't think so.
You can visit ruckpack.com. That's RUKPACK.com. You can use code JillyB for 15% off your next order.
RUKPACK.com and use code JillyB for 15% off on your next order.
All right, so we have 2 Dear Jilly Bs that you are not going to want to miss. Number 1, Dear Jilly B, how do I find a good partner? Is the best partner for me always the highest duper in my area? I Love this question. I was just talking to Mary Brasha about, hey, do you have have you found your mixed partner for next year? And she's like, I haven't made a decision yet. It's really interesting. I'm working on, I want to find the right energy, the person that I vibe my best with, I vibe best with. So glad we can use that word again, vibe.
And Mary, if you don't know, is a person who has had some of
the best partners,
male partners in the game, and has played with probably a wider variety than almost anyone. Then in reverse, maybe Dylan Frazier, who seems to have a new girl every week. So she has had quite a variety compared to some.
And I really, really appreciated, Mary saying, I want someone that can trust me with my dinking, someone that I vibe really well with, because I feel the same. Sometimes the best partner for you is not the highest duper. Okay, it's not the best man or the best woman at the club create the best doubles team. It's conceivably that you might suck together, actually, if you do that. So can we, I always say when I play with Sarah Ansbury, I'm like 10 to 15% better because she brings that out of me. She makes me that way. She gives me advice. She gives me good vibes and motivation. We're laughing and we're making jokes on the court. So instead of trying to find the best player for your next tournament, how about finding the best player for you?
So what are the things you look for?
It's funny.
What is vibe?
Tyra and I have very different energies on the court, and I find that like her calmness makes me calmer, and I need that. And then she has said to me like, oh, I like that you're really energetic because sometimes I get a little quiet and like I actually like to be more energetic. So
yeah,
I think finding someone who maybe isn't you multiplied is a good thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Too similar is not good in marriage or in pickleball.
I agree, actually. I don't know. And then you put Jalmay and I on a court together, we're having a great time. I actually think that might distract me a little.
There's an answer to that too, because his humor and his energy is a different style than yours. But yeah, no, I do think that, and Brandon French, same thing. Like, you bring out a good side of both of them that
fun.
Often they probably don't see in their female partners.
Yeah.
And I think that is key.
And sometimes for a female looking for a good mixed partner, it's about trust. Like, I think something Vivian David was saying about, sorry, go ahead. You tell the story.
Oh, no. I was just thinking of that earlier, that Vivian in her post-round interview said that she loves that Thomas Wilson gives her a few more, feet or inches of space a lot more often than his skill could dictate. Right?
Yeah.
Here's a guy who burst onto the scene in singles, moving as much and as fast as anyone I've seen, including Jalmay. And we know he could hit every ball within a foot of the right sideline, but he lets her have those points because if you just sit there and watch your partner hit every ball and then one comes to you, you get cold, and it helps her stay in the point. And I think, there's two sides to that. We posted that clip of you and Jalmay, who comes within a foot of the baseline to hit a third, and you're applauding him. So help describe for our listeners how and when that difference should go.
Okay, I have this theory with doubles pickleball that, like, if you know what your partner's going to do, your chances of winning are much higher. And maybe that's like overly simplified, but I'll give you a perfect example. I knew Jalmay was going to come over and take the third. I talked to him before. I go, take the third. And then if he hits a good drop, take the fifth in the air and rip their heads off. So like, we know what we're doing. And he never once in all of MLP came over and took a dink
You weren't expecting.
that I wasn't expecting. I played with DJ Young. I love DJ. We played at Vegas. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, where did he just come from? I didn't see him coming. And like, he just took a dink and I'm like a little jarred. Or he speeds up a ball that like is so unbelievable because his talent level is so immense that I didn't even think you could do that with a paddle face that looked like that and a wrist angle that looked like that. And I'm a little bit caught by surprise. So then the ball comes in, it's like a sitter to my backhand and I'm late on it because I didn't know he was going to do that. So I think there's this constant like, do you know your partner's game? And that's like, again, 10 to 15% increase in likelihood of winning and playing better, just really knowing what they're going to do on each ball.
Yeah. What would you say to a person who, just as a basic guideline, is like, hey, when I play mixed doubles as the right side female, I'm going to stand 2 feet behind the kitchen line and give my partner space. And if they opt out, I'm there to hit it. Is that a viable strategy?
Of course.
And
Of course. Just be aligned on strategy with your partner. Just be aligned on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that not enough credit often enough is given to that beta player, so to speak, for reading the shots correctly and leaving the right balls and being there to just support whatever leaks by. In fact, in reverse, I was watching this clip of Christian Alshon playing a pro-am with Katie Couric, and he was literally just playing I formation singles behind her.
I love it.
Like, go try and hit a ball every time Katie misses, you just hit it over her head.
I'm going to suggest that to Jaume for our next
totally.
tournament together.
Just like Jilly, go up and feast and pick up the scraps.
Yeah, exactly. Jaume, pick up my scraps.
So yeah. Crack the formula on pro-ams.
The other Dear Jilly B that I think is super relevant to pros and amateurs listening to this is, Dear Jilly B, I'm nervous to serve big. I notice a lot of my fellow rec play players and friends are serving bigger and bigger. I notice the pros are serving bigger. I'm so scared of missing. Mm-hmm. And I started to putt better in golf when you told me to stop thinking about my next putt.
Exactly.
Just focus on this putt.
Yeah, no, so often in the case with especially like 4-footers, that zone where you're like, it's not really a gimme, but I also don't want to embarrass myself. People get timid and they start trying to baby it in the hole because they want to have a 6-inch comebacker.
It's a great way to miss a putt.
Yeah. And I would say when you actually watch, good players, they're hitting it with conviction. They're hitting it with enough pace to hit the back of the cup, not just dribble in the hole. I think that's absolutely.
If you tried to serve 10 balls in a row as hard as you could, I don't think you could miss more than 3. I'm serious. Like, if your arm is loose, try and hit the back of the fence. I'm not sure you could miss 3 out of 10.
Right.
You know how you miss 3 out of 10 serves?
Trying.
Steering. I'm nervous.
Guiding.
I'm just trying to get it over.
Yeah.
And so we've seen this increase in serve depth and speed at the pro level as well. Like James Ignatowicz was serving so big. I mean, I think he almost had an ace on Christian Alshon, who is one of the fastest players on the tour. And I think in an interview, he just said, Tyson told me to stop, wussing it over or babying it over. So I just started unleashing on it. And now James's serve is like a massive weapon. So
Absolutely.
Why not? Why are we not going for our serves? I've always been a huge proponent of going for the serve.
Totally. Now, does that change in rally scoring? Your mindset?
It doesn't. I try not to let it for me because mentally, if I get a little tight on my serve, I'm going to miss it anyway. I think just plan on missing 1 serve a game and rally, and that gives you the freedom to go for it. Like in tennis, if I ever got a little yippy on my second serve, I used to tell myself statistically just try and hit 2 first serves because the odds of missing 2 first serves in a row are really low.
Mm-hmm. So it's 2021. You're serving. You still go.
It's 2020.
Well, I guess in that case, you're on the serve to win a point, but that wouldn't change 19 all.
I think a lot of people at 21-20 on serve would absolutely serve big to try and get a short return that they then drive at the opponent coming in. Yeah, and I think that's a great strategy.
Must serve for the win protects that exact sentiment. So really, it shouldn't change at all.
It shouldn't change.
Now, what if you're downwind and you've missed 5 long? Maybe you've got to figure out a different strategy. Stand 6 feet behind the baseline. But the sentiment is still there. You just never want to play sports guiding and steering. And that goes for dinks. That goes for thirds. That goes for everything. Conviction is everything in sports.
Everything.
So, let her rip.
So this has been a really juicy pod, very thick pod, a very serious pod, different tonality than we normally have. I'm hoping next week I can find a little more joy in the sport because I want to be able to do our sign off, which is pickleball is joy. Don't ever let anyone tell you differently. But this has been a hard week to feel that way.
Yeah. So with that, what was the most joyous moment of the weekend?
When our Airbnb host brought candles to cover up the stench of cigarettes in our Airbnb. That was a joyous moment.
It wouldn't be Vegas without the smell of cigs. It's just part of the ambiance. Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
So, till next time, thanks for being with us. Please leave a comment, subscribe. We really want to know how you feel. Who's been on a court with someone with a clearly delambed paddle? I think this is really tough in the amateur world, but they have zero testing basically. But shame is a powerful, powerful motivator. So bring it.
Feel free to email us questions, thoughts at thispblife@gmail.com. We're pretty open books. And we're going to do it. We're going to do the sign off. Pickleball is joy.
Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Thanks for listening.
This Pickleball Life is a Tomahawk production, 100% organic, self-made, and homegrown. Music by K-Dubs, editing by K-Dubs and Jilly B. Check out pbgods.com and use code PBLifers for 10% off your next order. Do you have a question for Jilly B? Email us at thispblife@gmail.com to be included in future episodes. Don't forget to click subscribe.
This Pickleball Life.